All right, let's just jump right into one of the wildest stories you've probably never heard. Imagine this. It's November 20th, 1980. There's this lake in Louisiana over a square mile wide, and in the span of a few hours, it just vanishes. The whole thing gets sucked down a hole. I know, it sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie, but it actually happened. So that's the big mind-bending question, right? How does that even happen? Well, in this explainer, we're going to break it down. This is an incredible story about how one tiny, almost unnoticeable error led to consequences so massive they literally reshaped a piece of the planet. To really get our heads around this, we've got to rewind the clock. Let's go back to that quiet morning, just moments before everything went completely sideways. So, meet our main character, Lake Peigneur. And honestly, there was nothing special about it. It was a pretty typical, sleepy lake. A popular spot for fishing, sure, but it was just a shallow body of fresh water, only about 10 feet deep on average. Just a totally normal, unremarkable part of the Louisiana landscape. But you see, the real story here, the source of all the drama, wasn't on the surface. It was what was hiding directly underneath the lake bed. Get this. Deep beneath the mud and water, the Diamond Crystal Salt Company was running this colossal salt mine. And when I say colossal, I mean it. We're talking about these massive, cathedral-sized caverns carved out of a giant salt dome, some of them reaching down 1,300 feet. It was this hidden, man-made world made of salt, sitting right under a freshwater lake. Okay, and this is where things get really interesting, because you have two things that should never mix. The salt they were mining, halite, is incredibly strong. It's rock solid, as long as it stays dry. But the moment you introduce fresh water, well, it's like kryptonite. Fresh water is a super powerful solvent that just eats salt for breakfast. So what you had was a fragile, water-soluble structure basically holding up an entire lake. What could possibly go wrong? So you have these two separate worlds, the water up top and the salt down below, existing in this super fragile balance. And then a third party came along and made one critical mistake that brought them crashing together. And that third party was an oil rig. It was contracted by Texaco, and on that particular morning, it was just out on the lake doing its thing, drilling an exploratory well, looking for oil deep underground. They had absolutely no idea they were about to strike something way, way more volatile than oil. Now, this is the absolute kicker. This disaster wasn't caused by a broken machine or some huge explosion. It was a data failure, a clerical error, basically. The drilling team was using maps that were just plain wrong. Because of a mix-up between two different map coordinate systems, they thought the mine was in a slightly different spot. That tiny little discrepancy was enough for them to think they were drilling in a safe area, when in reality, their 14-inch drill bit was aimed straight for the ceiling of the salt mine below. Yeah, there's actually a name for this kind of thing, a cartographic failure. It's a pretty powerful reminder, isn't it? That sometimes the biggest mistakes aren't made with wrenches and blowtorches, but with charts and numbers. An error on paper that, in this case, was about to unlock a geological nightmare. All right, now for the main event. Let's look at how that one tiny puncture hole escalated into an unstoppable, earth-changing force of nature. The second that drill bit broke through, it started this insane, unstoppable feedback loop. First, the puncture. Lake water starts pouring into the mine. Then, dissolution. That fresh water immediately starts eating away at the salt pillars and the edges of the hole, making it bigger and bigger and bigger. That leads to step 3, collapse. The mine roof just gives way, turning that little hole into a massive one. And that kicks off the final stage, a giant churning vortex on the surface as all 3.5 billion gallons of lake water start draining into the earth like the world's biggest bathtub. And this all happened incredibly fast. The breach was in the morning. By midday, the vortex was a raging monster, swallowing the entire multi-million-dollar oil rig, 11 barges, a bunch of boats. It even sucked in a 65-acre chunk of a nearby botanical garden. By the afternoon, the drain was so powerful, it actually reversed the flow of a 12-mile-long canal, pulling salt water from the Gulf of Mexico inland to fill the void. I mean, can you even wrap your head around that kind of power? The whirlpool grew to be over 60 meters wide. It created a temporary 150-foot waterfall where the canal met the lake. The forces at play were literally re-engineering the entire local water system in real time. But here it is, the single most astonishing fact in this whole insane story. Despite this apocalyptic scene, the collapsing mine, the giant whirlpool swallowing everything in sight, the number of people who died was 0. The 55 miners down below and the drill crew up on the rig, they all managed to evacuate in time. An absolute miracle in the middle of all that chaos. So while all the lives were saved, the landscape itself was changed forever. This disaster didn't just cause temporary damage, it created a permanent scar on the face of the Earth. This before and after table really says it all, doesn't it? A 10-foot deep freshwater lake became a 1,300-foot deep saltwater crater. The entire ecosystem was just gone, wiped out and replaced by a saltwater one. And of course, a fully operational salt mine was completely destroyed and flooded, lost forever in an instant. The disaster didn't just drain a lake, it created a new, totally alien one in its place. In the aftermath, naturally, the finger-pointing started. Texaco and its drilling contractor ended up paying out tens of millions of dollars in settlements. But the legal battles set this powerful new precedent. You are responsible for verifying the data you use. You can't just blindly trust old maps when the consequences of being wrong are this enormous. So, why does this one event from 1980 still matter so much? Well, because the lessons learned were profound. It forced industries to adopt 3D mapping to make sure different data sources actually line up. It became a classic case study in engineering ethics about the duty to verify your information. And for geologists, it left a permanent scar, a technogenic marker in the Earth's sediment, a clear layer of chaos that will tell the story of this mistake for thousands of years. And that leaves us with the final and honestly kind of an unsettling thought. Lake Peigneur was a perfect example of a system failure, where one single tiny data error cascaded into geological chaos. It really makes you wonder, as our own technological systems get more and more complex and interconnected, what small, unseen mapping errors might be lurking out there right now, just waiting for the wrong drill bit in the wrong place?